The autumn wind whistled through the narrow streets of Riverside as Rohan adjusted his delivery bag, checking the address one more time on his phone. 142 Maple Grove. The neighborhood had seen better days, with leaves collecting in corners and paint peeling off the Victorian-era homes that lined the street. Rohan hadn't planned on being a delivery driver at 25, but life had other plans. With his father's medical bills piling up and his younger sister's college tuition due, every extra shift counted. The evening deliveries paid better, even if they meant navigating the city's forgotten corners. The house at 142 Maple Grove stood slightly apart from its neighbors, shadows deepening across its facade as the sun set. The porch light flickered weakly, casting uneven patterns across worn wooden steps. Rohan approached, the warm bag of Chinese food held carefully in his hands. He pressed the doorbell, hearing it echo inside. No response. He was about to ring again when the door creaked open just enough to reveal a small face. A girl, no more than 8, peered out at him. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and her clothes looked like they hadn't been changed in days. "Evening," Rohan said softly, trying to keep his voice gentle. "I have your delivery from Golden Dragon." The girl's eyes darted nervously behind her before returning to Rohan. "How much?" she whispered, her voice hoarse. "It's already paid for online," Rohan replied, noticing a fresh bruise on her wrist as she reached for the bag. "Is everything okay? Are your parents home?" The girl withdrew slightly, clutching the food bag. "They're sleeping," she mumbled, but something in her voice made Rohan's skin prickle. 20 years of living with a police officer father had taught him to trust his instincts. A crash sounded from somewhere inside the house, followed by what seemed like muffled crying. The girl flinched, nearly dropping the bag. "I need to go," she said quickly, trying to close the door, but Rohan had already spotted the rope marks on her ankles, partially hidden by worn socks. "Wait," he said, holding up his hand. "I can help. Whatever's happening, you don't have to face it alone." Tears welled up in the girl's eyes. "Please," she whispered, "they'll hurt my little brother again if anyone finds out." Rohan's heart raced as he processed the situation. His father's voice echoed in his head, "Sometimes the right choice is the hardest one." He pulled out his phone, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. "What's your name?" he asked, trying to keep her attention while he discreetly typed 911 into his phone. "Lily," she answered, her voice trembling. "Please don't leave us." "I won't," Rohan promised, pressing the call button. "I'm staying right here, Lily. Help is coming." As he waited for the operator to answer, Rohan noticed movement in an upstairs window, a smaller face, perhaps 4 or 5 years old, pressed against the glass. The pieces fell into place, 2 children, trapped in what should have been their sanctuary, victims of circumstances they couldn't control. The operator's voice came through, and Rohan spoke quietly but clearly, keeping his eyes on Lily. "I'm a delivery driver at 142 Maple Grove. I have a situation involving 2 children in danger. No visible weapons, but signs of abuse. Please send help immediately." Lily's eyes widened with fear, but Rohan reached out his hand. "It's going to be okay," he said firmly. "No one's going to hurt you or your brother anymore. I promise." In the distance, sirens began to wail, and for the first time that evening, Rohan saw something new in Lily's eyes: hope. The wailing sirens grew louder as Rohan maintained eye contact with Lily, his heart pounding against his ribs. Through the gap in the doorway, he caught glimpses of the house's interior: overturned furniture, broken picture frames, and walls bearing the marks of violence. "They're coming up the stairs," Lily whispered urgently, her small frame trembling. "My brother, Tommy, he's locked in the upstairs bedroom." Heavy footsteps thundered above them, followed by angry shouting. Rohan's training as a former security guard kicked in. "Lily, listen carefully. When I count to 3, open the door fully. Can you do that for me?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. The sound of breaking glass echoed from upstairs, followed by a child's frightened cry. 1. Rohan positioned himself. 2. He heard police cars screeching to a halt outside. 3. The door swung open, revealing the full horror of the scene. A man stood at the top of the stairs, his face contorted with rage, dragging a small boy by the arm. Tommy couldn't have been more than 5, his face streaked with tears and terror. "Who called the cops?" the man roared, his bloodshot eyes finding Rohan at the doorway. "You delivery people need to mind your own business." "Let the boy go," Rohan said firmly, stepping inside despite every instinct screaming at him to wait for the police. "The house is surrounded. There's nowhere to run." A woman appeared behind the man, her movements erratic and unstable. "Julian, they're going to take them away. We can't let them take them." Her arms were covered in track marks, her eyes unfocused and wild. Rohan heard police officers announcing themselves outside. In that moment of distraction, Julian's grip on Tommy loosened. The boy wrenched free, tumbling down several stairs before Rohan lunged forward to catch him. "Run!" Lily screamed, grabbing her brother's hand as Rohan set him down. The children bolted for the door just as police officers burst in, weapons drawn. On the ground. "Now!" The commanding voice of Officer Priya Singh filled the house. Julian and his wife froze, their faces shifting from rage to fear as reality crashed down around them. As the couple was being handcuffed, Rohan found himself sitting on the front steps, an arm around each child. Tommy buried his face in Rohan's jacket while Lily watched the scene unfold, her expression a mixture of relief and uncertainty. Officer Singh approached them, her face softening as she knelt down. "You're very brave, both of you," she said gently. "The paramedics want to check you over, okay? Just to make sure you're all right." "What's going to happen to us?" Lily asked, her voice small but steady. Rohan felt her grip on his arm tighten. "We've contacted your Aunt Regina," Officer Singh replied. "She's been looking for you since your parents took you 6 months ago. She's on her way from Portland right now." The mention of their aunt brought a glimmer of recognition to Tommy's eyes. "Aunt Reggie," he whispered, lifting his head. "With the big garden?" Lily's breath caught. "You mean, we get to go home? To the house with the treehouse?" Officer Singh nodded, smiling. "Yes, sweetheart. Your aunt has been fighting to get custody of you both. She never stopped looking." As paramedics approached with blankets and gentle words, Rohan began to stand, but Lily grabbed his hand. "Will you stay? Just until Aunt Reggie comes?" Rohan looked at Officer Singh, who nodded. "I've got some paperwork for you anyway, hero," she said with a knowing smile. "Looks like you're stuck here for a bit longer." As the night deepened around them, Rohan sat with the children, watching as police and social workers moved in and out of the house. Each passing minute seemed to lift a weight from Lily and Tommy's shoulders, their traumatic ordeal slowly giving way to cautious hope. "You know," Rohan said softly, "my dad always told me that sometimes angels come disguised as delivery drivers." He pulled a fortune cookie from his pocket, the last one from his delivery bag. "What do you say we see what kind of future this one predicts?" The children huddled closer as Lily carefully broke the cookie, reading the slip of paper in the fading light. "The darkest nights lead to the brightest dawns." For the first time that evening, both children smiled. The fluorescent lights of Riverside General Hospital cast harsh shadows across the waiting room where Rohan sat with Lily and Tommy. Despite the late hour, he couldn't bring himself to leave. His phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from his delivery service supervisor, but some things were more important than a job. Tommy had fallen asleep, his small body curled up on the plastic chairs, head resting on Lily's lap. His sister remained awake, her eyes fixed on the double doors through which doctors and nurses occasionally passed. The medical examination had revealed the full extent of their ordeal: malnutrition, untreated injuries, and the deeper wounds that couldn't be seen. "You should eat something," Rohan said softly, offering Lily a sandwich from the vending machine. She took it hesitantly, as if expecting it to be snatched away at any moment. "They used to do that," she whispered, carefully unwrapping the sandwich. "Give us food and then take it away if we weren't good enough." Her voice carried the weight of memories no child should bear. Rohan felt his chest tighten. "That won't ever happen again," he promised. "Your Aunt Regina is almost here, and Officer Singh said she's a really good person." The mention of their aunt brought a faint smile to Lily's face. "I remember her garden," she said, taking a small bite. "She grew strawberries, and she'd let us eat them right off the plants. Tommy was too little to remember much, but I do." A commotion at the entrance drew their attention. A woman in her early 40s burst through the doors, her auburn hair disheveled from travel, eyes scanning the waiting room frantically. Officer Singh stood beside her, pointing in their direction. "Lily?" The woman's voice broke as she spotted them. "Oh my God, Lily!" Tommy stirred at the sound, his eyes fluttering open. "Aunt Reggie," he mumbled sleepily. Regina rushed forward, dropping to her knees before the children. Her hands hovered uncertainly, afraid to touch them, to make this moment real and risk it shattering. Lily made the decision for her, launching herself into her aunt's arms, pulling Tommy with her. "I never stopped looking," Regina sobbed, holding them close. "Every day, every single day, I searched. The police said you could be anywhere, but I knew I'd find you." Rohan stood quietly, preparing to slip away, but Regina's hand shot out, catching his wrist. "You're the delivery driver?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. "The one who saved them?" "I just did what anyone would do," Rohan replied, embarrassed by the gratitude in her eyes. "No," Regina said firmly, still holding the children. "You did what everyone should do, but what too few actually would. You saw something wrong and you acted. You're their hero." Officer Singh approached, her notepad in hand. "Ms. Mitchell, we'll need to go over some paperwork. The emergency custody order has been granted, but there's still documentation needed." Regina nodded, reluctantly loosening her hold on the children. "Of course. Lily, Tommy, I need to talk to the officer for a few minutes. I'll be right over there, okay? You can see me the whole time." "Can Rohan stay with us?" Tommy asked, his small hand finding Rohan's. "Just until you're done?" Regina looked at Rohan questioningly. He nodded, settling back into his chair as the children instinctively moved closer to him. Together, they watched as Regina and Officer Singh went through papers, their aunt's pen flying across document after document. "The strawberries will be ready soon," Lily said suddenly, her voice thoughtful. "At Aunt Reggie's house. They always ripen in late summer." "Maybe you can plant some new ones too," Rohan suggested. "Start your own garden patch." Tommy's eyes lit up. "Can we grow pizza plants?" For the first time, Lily laughed, a real laugh, uninhibited by fear. "Pizza doesn't grow on plants, silly." "How do you know?" Tommy argued. "Maybe we just haven't found the right seeds yet." Their banter continued, transforming the sterile hospital waiting room into something warmer, more hopeful. Rohan watched as the shadows in their eyes began to recede, replaced by the spark of childhood that had been temporarily stolen from them. Regina returned, her face tear-stained but determined. "Everything's signed. We can go home, all of us, together." As the children gathered their few belongings, Regina turned to Rohan. "Thank you isn't enough," she said softly. "But it's all I have right now. You've given these children their lives back." Rohan smiled, watching as Tommy attempted to explain his pizza plant theory to Officer Singh. "Sometimes," he said, "all it takes is one person paying attention at the right moment." They did the hard part, they survived. They kept hoping. That's the real miracle here. 3 weeks had passed since that fateful night of the delivery. Rohan stood in Regina's backyard, helping Tommy place a small wooden sign in front of his new garden patch. The sign, painted in wobbly letters by Tommy himself, read, "Pizza Garden, no pepperoni trees yet." The autumn sun cast long shadows across Regina's sprawling garden, where Lily was carefully harvesting the last of the season's strawberries. She worked methodically, just as her aunt had taught her, placing each berry in her basket with deliberate care. The bruises on her wrists had faded, but other wounds would take longer to heal. "Mr. Rohan," Tommy called out, tugging at his sleeve. "When do you think the pizza seeds will sprout?" Rohan knelt beside the boy, examining the soil where they had planted tomatoes, basil, and oregano. "Well, these ingredients will help make pizza sauce," he explained. "Sometimes the best things come from putting different pieces together." Regina watched from the back porch, a tray of lemonade in her hands. The children's therapy sessions had been intense, but moments like these, simple, peaceful interactions, were equally healing. She had converted her home office into a bedroom for Tommy, while Lily took the room that had once belonged to Regina's sister, their mother, before everything went wrong. "Delivery for the Mitchell family." A familiar voice called from the side gate. Officer Singh appeared, carrying a stack of papers and a small potted plant. The children's faces lit up at her arrival. She had become a regular visitor, checking in on their progress and bringing small gifts that helped them feel secure. "Those better not be more forms to sign," Regina joked, but her eyes were grateful. Officer Singh had gone above and beyond, expediting their case and ensuring Julian and his wife remained in custody. "Actually," Officer Singh said, setting down her load, "these are acceptance letters. The children's applications for Riverside Elementary have been approved. They can start next semester, after the holiday break." Lily's basket clattered to the ground, strawberries rolling across the grass. "We can go to school?" Her voice trembled with excitement and fear. "A real school?" "A real school," Regina confirmed, pulling her niece close. "With art classes and music and other kids your age." Tommy looked uncertain. "Will they make fun of us? Before?" Rohan placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Hey, remember what we talked about? Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing something even when you're scared. And you won't be alone," Officer Singh added. "The school counselor, Ms. Patel, is wonderful. She's already looking forward to meeting you both." As the adults discussed arrangements, Lily quietly gathered her scattered strawberries. Rohan noticed her methodically counting each one, a habit she had developed to maintain control when feeling overwhelmed. He moved to help her, maintaining a respectful distance. "What if I'm too far behind?" she whispered, her fingers trembling slightly. "The other kids probably know so much more." "Then we'll help you catch up," Rohan said firmly. "Your aunt already found a tutor, remember? And I happen to know a thing or two about math and science." A small smile tugged at Lily's lips. "Because you're studying to be an engineer?" Rohan nodded. His evening delivery job had been financing his part-time engineering courses, though lately, he'd been spending more time here than at work or school. Something about these children, their resilience and determination, had shifted his priorities. "Speaking of studying," Officer Singh called out, "I have something else for you both." She retrieved 2 backpacks from her car, one purple, one green. "Every student needs proper school supplies." Tommy approached his backpack cautiously, as if it might disappear. When he unzipped it, his eyes widened at the sight of fresh notebooks, pencils, and even a small lunchbox decorated with dinosaurs. Lily's contained similar supplies, along with a journal that had a tiny lock, her very own private space. "I don't know what to say," Regina whispered to Officer Singh and Rohan, watching the children explore their gifts. After everything they've been through, to see them getting excited about normal things like school and gardens. They're survivors, Officer Singh replied softly. They just needed people to believe in them. As the afternoon light began to fade, Tommy suddenly grabbed Rohan's hand. Will you still visit us? Even after we start school? The question hung in the air, heavy with hope and fear of abandonment. Rohan looked at Regina, who nodded encouragingly. Try and stop me, he said, squeezing Tommy's hand. Someone has to help you check on that pizza garden. 6 months had passed since that life-changing delivery. The winter frost had given way to spring, and Regina's garden burst with new life. Rohan stood at the entrance to Riverside Elementary, his engineering textbook tucked under his arm. He wasn't just here as a visitor today, he had started volunteering with the after-school science program, helping kids like Lily and Tommy discover the wonder of learning. Inside the classroom, Lily sat with her new friend Hannah, their heads bent over a science project. The shy, frightened girl from that terrible night had slowly transformed into someone who raised her hand in class and smiled more easily. She still had moments when shadows crossed her face, but she was learning to trust in the permanence of good things. Mr. Rohan. Tommy's excited voice carried across the room. He ran forward, waving a paper proudly. Look! I got an A on my plant growth chart. The chart detailed the progress of their garden, including his beloved pizza patch, which had evolved into a thriving herb garden. That's fantastic, buddy. Rohan high-fived the boy, noticing how Tommy no longer flinched at sudden movements. Should we show Officer Singh when she comes for dinner tonight? The monthly dinners had become a tradition. Regina would cook, Officer Singh would bring dessert, and Rohan would arrive early to help the kids with homework. Sometimes, Ms. Patel, the school counselor, would join them. They had become an unconventional family, bound together by that one moment when a delivery driver chose to pay attention. Aunt Reggie's making lasagna, Lily announced, joining them. She says it's like pizza in pasta form. She paused, then added quietly, I had the dream again last night. Rohan nodded understanding. The nightmares still came sometimes, but less frequently now. Did you use the breathing exercises Ms. Patel taught you? Yes, Lily said. And I wrote in my journal after. I'm not scared of the dreams anymore. They're just memories. They can't hurt us now. The classroom slowly emptied as parents arrived to pick up their children. Hannah's mother chatted with Regina, who had come to collect the kids. The two women had become friends, organizing playdates and sharing parenting tips. Before we go, Regina said, there's something we need to discuss. She pulled out an envelope, handing it to Rohan. The judge set a date for the final custody hearing. We'd like you to be there. Rohan opened the envelope, reading the formal document inside. In 2 weeks, Regina's temporary custody would become permanent. Julian and his wife had already signed away their parental rights as part of their plea agreements. There's something else, Regina continued, her voice softening. The children and I have been talking. You've become such an important part of their lives, of all our lives. We'd like to make it official. Would you consider being their godfather? The question caught Rohan off guard. He looked at Lily and Tommy, seeing the hope in their eyes. 6 months ago, he was just a delivery driver trying to pay his way through engineering school. Now, he couldn't imagine his life without these children in it. Say yes. Tommy pleaded. You already help us with homework and check the garden and everything. And you never break promises, Lily added softly. Not like before. Rohan felt tears prick at his eyes. I would be honored, he managed to say. Later that evening, as they gathered around Regina's dining table, Officer Singh raised her glass in a toast. To family, she said, both the ones we're born with and the ones we choose. To pizza gardens, Tommy added seriously, making everyone laugh. To new beginnings, Lily said, her voice strong and clear. Rohan looked around the table at these people who had become his family. Sometimes the smallest decisions, stopping at a house, paying attention, making a call, could change everything. Not just for others, but for yourself as well. As the evening wound down, he helped Tommy water his garden one last time. The boy had insisted on planting strawberries alongside his herbs, saying they reminded him of hope. "Mr. Rohan," Tommy said suddenly, "do you think other kids like us got their happy ending too?" Rohan knelt beside him, choosing his words carefully. "Not all of them, buddy. That's why it's so important to pay attention, to be brave, to help when we can. Sometimes one person making one choice can change everything. Like you did with the pizza delivery?" "Like we all did," Rohan corrected gently. "You and Lily were brave enough to trust, Officer Singh worked hard to help, your Aunt Regina never gave up looking for you. We all play a part in making the world better." As the sun set over Regina's garden, casting long shadows across the flourishing plants, Rohan thought about how life's darkest moments could lead to its brightest beginnings. Sometimes it just took one person, one moment, one choice to set it all in motion. And sometimes, even in the most unlikely places, hope could take root and grow.